Hey everybody, welcome back to Around the Emirates podcast with Sara Mousa, where I speak to guests from across the UAE about topics you want to hear about. Today I am joined by special guest Khadija Al Jabri, who is a divorce and post-separation abuse coach and has a really interesting story to share. Hi Khadija.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you coming on to be an expert to talk about a really important subject. Obviously, there's a lot to unpack here with kind of your expertise and your experience. So please tell me your story and why you decided to become this type of coach specifically.
Okay. So I think I fell into this profession. Let's put it that way. I think when sometimes, we're thinking about our careers, you don't go to university thinking, I'm going to be a divorce coach. It's for actually a lot of divorce coaches, the inspiration to become a divorce coach comes from actually having gone through one yourself, right? Um, and about a couple of years back, I had gone through a very high conflict divorce, which resulted also in a lot of post-separation abuse. And at the time, I was actually in marketing and communications. And I was in marketing communications for about 20 years. Um, that's what I studied. That's the career I built for myself. That's the name I built for myself. And then life happens. And sometimes when life happens, you have these epitomes of instances that force you to take a different perspective on maybe not just your own challenges, but also challenges that other people are going through. When I was going through it, I remember spending quite a lot of time in the waiting rooms of um, authorities and courthouses and whatnot, because I was going through a situation that demanded me to rise to the occasion with very little information, with very little guidance. And when I used to spend time in those waiting rooms, I would interact with other people there. We'd be waiting for hours, right? Depending on when your hearing was and whatnot. And there was a very glaring common challenge between all of us. The challenge that I saw was that a lot of us lacked access to, I would say, credible information and credible guidance when it came to divorce. Yes, there are some great lawyers out there, but a lawyer's job starts and ends at advocating for you in court. But the thing about divorce is that it doesn't just affect you in court, it affects every aspect of your life. It affects your finances, it affects your social life, it affects your career, it affects your children, it affects your home. It affects your health, right? So it's so multifaceted that it isn't a lawyer's job to fix those areas for yourself, for you, right? And I found that when I would spend time in these waiting rooms, actually some of the best advice that I would get were from other people who were there. Because some of them have been going through it for years. So people think, yeah, it's easy to get a divorce. You just file some papers, and it's done. But the thing is that sometimes it doesn't end with the paperwork. It sometimes is the beginning of what we call post-separation abuse, depending on the partner or your ex-spouse, right? There are plenty of people out there who just want to end things civilly, right? If two parties have come to a decision that we'll go our separate ways, but I'm not trying to make your life difficult post this decision, right? But then there are some people, on the other hand, who do the opposite, right? If you have been in a high conflict marriage, or you were in an abusive marriage, or if you were in a marriage that was very vindictive, or an unsafe marriage, right? What ends up happening after you leave that situation or leave the marriage, it gets uglier like by 10 times, 100 times over, right? Depending on the person that you're dealing with. And this could result in years of being dragged in court. It could result in years of financial challenges. It could result in years of instability. And that's why you find people going back again over and over and over again to the courts, or going to the authorities, or trying to get, peace of mind from the right parties, right? And what was sad about the situation when I was in the waiting rooms was it's not so much as to the camaraderie that forms in that space. It's more about, why is this information so difficult to access? Why is this guidance so difficult to get a hold of? And I think it was during those times where I felt it doesn't have to be this way. So it started this kind of like 6-year journey of trying to find some kind of a solution, right? So yes, I was in marketing and communications, but I had I would say, I had a lot of interest in strategy and policy making, and connection to kind of like, it was because of the places that I worked in and I was exposed to, where I saw how different parts of a puzzle can come together to form something positive, right? Be it in a lot of different industries. And because I was exposed to that, I was naturally inclined to look at all the gaps. I was naturally inclined to kind of see, right, we have a problem here, we have a problem here. Then maybe if we, bring all of these together and we come up with some kind of a solution, we can help people who are going through these challenges, right? And initially, what I wanted to do was, maybe I should just start a social advocacy platform around domestic challenges or familial challenges or societal challenges, right? What I ended up realizing was that it's not action oriented. There are, when you are creating advocacy, right? Yes, you're advocating for the people that need it the most, or need to be seen, or need to be heard, right? But what are you really doing for them on the ground? What are you really, like, are you pushing the needle for them? Are you helping them? Are you guiding them? Are you holding their hand? Because honestly, when you are going through a high conflict divorce, or you are going through post-separation abuse, you need a lot of hand holding. You need somebody to kind of guide you, because these challenges are very emotional. And what ends up happening is that it's very difficult for you to think with clarity. It's very difficult to think in a way that is action oriented, because there's so many emotions tied to it, right? And sometimes you need somebody to kind of help you snap out of it, just a little, just for a moment. It's not to disregard the pain or that the person is going through. No, their pain is very valid and very real, right? But because you need to think about your life after the divorce, you need to think about your children's lives after the divorce, you need to think about life coming into fruition to a better situation, you need to have sometimes somebody to hold the mirror up in front of you and say, hey, are the decisions that you're making right now in your best interest? Are the decisions that you're making right now in the best interest of your children, right? And sometimes when we're in those situations, we can make horrendous mistakes, which can take years to fix. And sometimes they're irreversible. Sometimes just simply irreversible.
There's a lot that you're unpacking here, Khadija. If I may, there's a lot that you're touching on that is so important for listeners of this episode, coming from talking about the struggles of, you know, the difference between kind of the smoother versus a more stressful divorce, so to speak, and the trauma that can come through that, right? Like the stress of that then brings on the children, the fact that not everybody can have a process of that is civil and amicable. And you just said it yourself, like sometimes you just need to sit in front of that person and think, are you sure that you're making the right decisions in the steps that you're taking to dissolve this partnership? Are you sure you're making the right choices for you and for your children? Now that itself comes with challenges of having to like deal with all the different emotions and the people and understanding the element that kids bring into that. What would you say has been kind of your most pressing challenge in this process of becoming this specific type of coach? And what kind of ways do you overcome this, or do you feel like you can kind of find a solution for these families?
So when I say that I fell into coaching, right? It's very true, right? It was literally like, okay, fine, the social advocacy idea may not be the right direction forward, right? So I started working with a business mentor to kind of help me kind of get my head in the right space. And she said to me, why don't you explore divorce coaching? And I started looking into it, right? What I saw was something extremely tangible, right? Where I could create some kind of real change or real impact on an individual level for people who are going through this process. But the challenge that comes with that, right, with setting up a practice like that, especially in this part of the world, is because divorce is still taboo in this part of the world. This is a reality. This is a reality, right? But the other reality on the flip side is that I don't want to say numbers because the numbers are sometimes a bit skewed. But there are a lot of people out there getting divorced. Right? I think we can all agree to that, right? And many of those divorces don't end up amicably. And there is this mentality that we have, which is, I want to keep my private affairs private, right? I don't want to involve too many people into kind of like into that process, right? And I already have a lawyer. Why do I need a divorce coach? Okay. And there's a lot of education that needs to happen around the benefits of divorce coaching. What people don't realize yet in this part of the world is that actually divorce coaching can save you from a lot of potential mistakes that you could make with a lawyer. Divorce coaching can actually also can have a lot of benefits towards going into it with a more of a strategic mindset and shifting your mindset from what we call in divorce coaching, shifting your mindset from the story of divorce to the business of divorce. It's about detachment, right? A lawyer is not going to do that for you. A lawyer is not going to teach you those skills in terms of how to detach. Okay.
Very
And
interesting.
in essence, we actually complement lawyers a lot of times. But it's a learning curve, I think. And technically, I'm the first certified CDC divorce coach in the UAE. So it's a process of the challenge. Thank you. The challenge that I'm personally going through right now is getting people to kind of understand the value and the importance of working with a divorce coach. And it's going to take some time. But the good news is that other parts of the world started the same way. And today you have practicing divorce coaches in Saudi Arabia, for example, now, who have been practicing for 7 years, 8 years in the market. You have divorce coaches in Qatar, you have divorce coaches in Kuwait. You also, in the US and Europe, there's a larger community of divorce coaches. But there's nothing stopping us from, in terms of this region, coming up to the same level, right? The nuances, though, when it comes to divorce coaching in this part of the world, is that there is the social aspect and the cultural aspect that we have to be considerate of, right? But there's also the fact that a lot of us, deal with the Sharia law, for example, right? Which brings a whole set of intricacies, if you like, that we need to be mindful of, right? So I think it's a phase, I would say, that the challenge that I'm in right now, or the phase that I'm in right now, is that it's about ensuring that people understand the benefit of of divorce coaching and how it can actually help divorces, not just to end, but to end mindfully. It's people ask me, so what are you pro divorce? I say, no, I'm not pro divorce. I am pro mindful transitions throughout the divorce process.
I
Right?
love that.
If there's a chance to help somebody, if there's a chance to help somebody, save their marriage, that's something as a divorce coach that I work with as well. And if that happens, that's wonderful. I am not pro divorce because I know how ugly divorce can get.
That is something so beautiful, that you're doing something so positive for people. Like, you're turning something that stereotypically has become so difficult and almost like reputationally damaging for people to talk about. And yet it actually could be a very good and healthy thing for you and for your mental health and your family's happiness, if it is the right decision for the family. And I really appreciate the fact that you've taken such a bold step to do something that's so different. And so, as you say, you're the first kind of coach in the UAE, definitely. And to be certified the way that you are, and to have gone through what you've gone through and taken that and turned it into such a beautiful opportunity, and being mindful about that and spreading that message of mindfulness, I think that's such a fantastic platform that you're using to make people feel better and to guide them through something that they may not think is actually an important new chapter in their lives. And
Yeah.
you keep mentioning how you want people to understand that it's okay to go through this, that it's not the worst thing in the world. Is there one kind of message that you have for the listeners who might be going through this and experiencing kind of the trauma of separation?
If I had to give one piece of advice to somebody going through this process, alhamdulillah, I would say that most people don't take it lightly. Most people do not take divorce lightly, right? But what I think people need to understand is that you need to step into divorce with your eyes wide open. And what do I mean by that is that you walking into it blind and walking into it with misinformation and walking into it without the right knowledge and guidance can be extremely dangerous and risky for not just yourself, but most importantly for our children. There's one thing I always like to ask people is this: when things are very vindictive, right, between a couple, I ask them, do you hate your ex more than you love your children? That automatically disarms the person to think on the defense and start thinking more mindfully and thinking more strategically, like, oh, wait, this decision I'm about to make could potentially really hurt my children. So
That is a very good point.
yeah. So I think, because at the end of the day, if you have children, you are tied to this person for the rest of your life. Whether you're divorced, whether you live in separate homes or not, you are tied to this person, right? Sometimes it's difficult, specifically when you are in a high conflict situation or an abusive situation, where you have no other choice other than to protect yourself and to protect your children, and you have to have all your walls up, right? But even with that, there are ways to disarm the conflict. There are ways and tools to do that. The question is, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to invest in yourself? Are you willing to invest in the right resources to help you set yourself up for the future and set your kids up for the future. It's not just as simple, I'm going to give a call to a lawyer and, let's get this done. There's so much more involved. So walk into it with eyes wide open.
That was such a powerful speech, and I think that really resonates with me and a lot of people in general. Even just the way to approach conflict within families in general is all about having your eyes open, all about being mindful, just being kind to one another, and also knowing that your actions have not just consequences, but your actions have a domino effect. People, your whole family will feel it if you're upset, if you're frustrated, if you're depressed. So knowing that if you don't try to be positive about it, if you don't try to do good in the situation, it will affect everybody involved, and it will make people feel that, as a result of being in your surroundings and hearing you yell and scream and fight. So I really appreciate the fact that you're giving such powerful advice, and I am so grateful that I had the chance to talk to you today about just the positive outlook that can come with separation. And I'm grateful that you were able to come on my show today to speak more about this.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I want to thank you again for giving me the platform to speak about something that affects so many of us out there. My ultimate hope and wish would be that, a couple of years from now, we have very different conversations around divorce in our homes.
I could not agree more. And I'm so thankful that I got to share your story. And I'm sure a lot of people listening here today will also resonate with your story and will follow you and continue to kind of hear your advice, because I learned a lot personally on this episode, and I'm thankful for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.